In order to determine the values of the 6 trigonometric functions of 225 degrees, we're first going to sketch out 225 degrees, and then we're going to make a triangle based on the line that we drew. So one part of the triangle being on that line, a vertical line going straight to the x-axis, and then a line along the x-axis to form a right triangle. We're going to identify our reference angle, which in this case is going to be 45 degrees, and then use our knowledge of special right triangles to label the sides of this 45, 45, 90 triangle, 1 for the adjacent side, 1 for the opposite side, and the square root of 2 for the hypotenuse. All we need to do now is to walk through each of the 6 trigonometric functions. So the sine of theta in a right triangle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent of theta is the opposite over the adjacent. And for each of these trig functions, we have a reciprocal trig function. So the reciprocal of sine of theta is cosecant of theta, which is the hypotenuse over the opposite side. The reciprocal of cosine is the secant of theta, which is the hypotenuse over the adjacent side. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent of theta, which will be the adjacent over the opposite side. Now, the thing we have to consider as we figure out each of these values is which quadrant we're actually in. So we're looking at values that are falling in the third quadrant, which will tell us something about the sines that we need. So the sine of 225 degrees is going to equal the opposite over the hypotenuse, so 1 over the square root of 2. However, because we're in the third quadrant, sine is negative, so we have to apply a negative sign to that value. And if we rationalize it, we'll get negative root 2 over 2. Now the cosine of 225 degrees is going to equal the adjacent over the hypotenuse, 1 over the square root of 2. And cosine is also negative in the third quadrant, so we have to negate it, and when we rationalize it, we get the same value, negative root 2 over 2. The tangent of 225 degrees, on the other hand, is going to be the opposite over the adjacent, 1 over 1, and tangent is positive in the third quadrant, so that simply ends up being a positive 1. And now for each of the reciprocal functions, we can just take the reciprocal of the values we got for the original. So the reciprocal for sine, to give us cosecant, is going to be the square root of 2 over 1, also negative because they have the same sign, which is going to simplify down to the square root of 2, and then of course that negated. Secant of 225 degrees is also going to be the square root of 2 over 1, negative, and so that will simplify down to negative root 2 as well. And the cotangent of 225 degrees is going to be the adjacent over the opposite, or 1 over 1, with a positive sign because cotangent is positive wherever tangent is positive, and that will simplify down to 1 and give us our final answer.